Okay, so describe what a single blind study and a double blind study are. So what are they? What are they? We'll talk about a few of the other things we mentioned in class yesterday as well. No. All right, so let's get to it. Single blind study, what does that mean? It's a single blind study. Allison, what do you have for a single blind study?
It's when an experiment, the test subjects don't have to be part of the control group or the experimental group of the experiment.
Yeah, good job. Good job. So the experimenter picking out the control group, okay, and he knows who the control group is and the experimental group. And why is that beneficial? Why is that good to know as an experimenter?
So the test subjects aren't biased.
Yeah, and you can maybe pick out that placebo effect if it's occurring, if it's happening, right? Good job. So for the experimenter to know exactly who the experimenter group is and who the control group is, that's beneficial for the study because then he can maybe or she can decide whether or not there might be a placebo effect or it might be obviously we could see the observations based off of, let's say, a treatment that's being given in this experiment. All right, good. What about a double blind study? Double blind study. What do we got here for this one? Christian, what do you have for double blind study? Yeah, good job. So no one, not even the experiment. Okay. The experimentees have no clue who the experimental group is or the control group, along with the experimenter himself. And what are some advantages of this? Why are these studies performed? Why are they done? Why do you think? Okay, all right. So to eliminate any type of bias and to maybe find really exactly if the treatment does perform at its peak. Okay, maybe you can pick out these observations, all right, if it's obviously presented to itself, if this treatment is really successful or really advantage, okay, for the people in this study. And you got to pick out from the obviously the control group. So a little bit more difficult though, okay, obviously to try to eliminate any type of biases, see if this treatment really does have any outstanding effects or obviously benefits to these people. All right, good. Is there any questions on a single blind study or a double blind study? All right, what about a naturalistic observation? We talked about that yesterday too. What is a naturalistic observation? Caitlin, since you looked over here. Yeah, good job. So you're making observations based off of a person, organism, animal, whatever, in its natural habitat. So give an example of a naturalistic observation. What's an example? What do we have here? What can you maybe think of, Raven? Okay, in the park. Yeah, good job. You're going to tell them about that you're observing them after the fact, right? So if you tell them before, they might act a little bit different, right, than what they might. It's like, oh, I'm going to try to not act as weird, maybe, right? I might not try to act like I'm playing LARP, live action role play in the park or something. But yeah. So maybe afterwards you're going to tell them. You probably should. It's like, hey, I made some observations. Just want to let you know about it. Is right if I publish my results, and if he says yes, then you can put his name down or her name. And if no, then maybe you can just put it anonymous. Yeah. So natural habitat, good. A deer out in the woods. Okay, that's a good example as well. You go see the deer in the zoo, not so much of a naturalistic observation. Okay, what about ex post facto? What does that mean? I talked about that yesterday as well. Ex post facto, what does that mean? These quasi experiments. Brittany, you remember? Yeah, good job. So we're picking these individuals, the experimentees, on pre-existing conditions. So it might be disease, it might be cancer, right? And we're choosing these individuals to help our study or experiment out that already have pre-existing conditions. Okay, good. So again, this is research on individuals that have pre-existing conditions. You might try to see if there's an ailment or there might be some sort of benefit to whatever you're trying to study for these individuals that already have, let's say, disease or cancer, that might have cancer, and to try to help them out with whatever you're trying to study. All right, I think that's all I went over yesterday, right? Yeah, because I think we went over that variable worksheet. Okay, so here are the terms for today. I only have 3 of them, so if we finish early, you might have some time to yourself. We'll see. We got longitudinal study. We got a cross-sectional study, a cohort sequential study. There you go. I'll let you guys write those 3 terms down. We'll talk about those. Yeah, go ahead, man. Are you done with these terms? Okay. One more minute to finish up here. We'll move on. All righty. We done? Okay. Longitudinal study. What's a longitudinal study? What do we got here? Wait a minute. Kiara, go ahead. Yeah, good job. Good job. So we're studying a variable for a long period of time. Get it? Longitudinal study. So this might be for the development of someone, right? So you might be watching someone develop through these stages. Okay, like Piaget. Remember talking about Piaget's developmental stages? Right. Yeah. So you might be talking about or researching, you might be experimenting how someone develops over longevity, a long period of time. So let's say this might be 5, 10, 20 years. Okay. And today we'll talk about some pros, some cons of these studies and how it might be very beneficial and for the most part might be costly for these types of experiments. Okay, so longevity or longitudinal study, you're studying an experiment for a long term. Cross-sectional study. What do you have for a cross-sectional study? Brady, what do you have for a cross-sectional study? Yeah, one specific time, right? Okay, good, good. So with a longitudinal study, this is for a long period of time, cross-sectional. You're just studying participants over at one brief for one period in time. So this isn't lasting years. Okay, this isn't even lasting weeks or months. This is really just seeing it at the moment at that time. Okay, so if you're talking about developmental stages, some examples might be you might examine someone from 5 years old, someone from 10 years old, someone from 15, someone from 20. Gather your results at that specific time and be done with the study. Okay, does that make sense? You're not viewing this this person develop over a long period of time. You're finding other, let's say, people to study for a certain given time for just one brief period in time. So you're not studying them over for a long period of time. It's just one specific time period. All right, cohort sequential. What about cohort sequential? So this is kind of a branch of a longitudinal study. What do you have for this one? Raven, what do you got?
Design in which multiple measures are taken over a period of time for 2 or more groups.
Yeah, good job. So you're examining someone, let's just say through their development of, let's say 2 to 5 years old. Okay, you're going to study that person, that group for, let's just say for a couple of years. Same thing with, let's say, another group. You're going to study a group from 10 to 15 years, right? So you're going to study that person, that group for that longevity of time. Okay, it's not as long as a longitudinal study, but you're examining the development of these groups and comparing them to what it might be of a longitudinal study. So you're only examining, let's say, a person, a group for, let's say, 2, 3 years, seeing their development, writing down these observations, and moving on. Okay, so it might be, like I mentioned, 2 to 5, 7 to 10. You might have one from 11 to 15. You might have one from 16 to 20. Does that make sense? Okay, you're only studying for a short period of time rather than a longevity, like let's say 20 years. Okay, so let's get into it. Tomorrow we're going to get into surveys, and you're going to create your own survey. I'm excited to see them. Excited to see them. We'll get into that more tomorrow. All right, so we finished up with a naturalistic observation, how we're studying people, organisms, animals, whatever have you, in their natural setting. If we let them know that we're studying them, they might act a little bit different. Obviously, they might actually have a different characteristics or behaviors if they know we are studying them at that given time. So longitudinal study, like I mentioned before, we're studying one group, one person for a long period of time. Okay. So a good example would be like the developmental stages. You're going to study this person starting off from birth, let's say up until their formal operational stage. Okay. And with that being said, that's a long period. Okay. That's a long period from really birth all the way up until, let's say they're, obviously 15, 16 years old. So that's 15, 20 years of studying one person or one group. You're writing down the observations, you're writing down their behaviors, their patterns. Okay. And you're really in a depth study over this people or this person or this group of people. So, what do you think are some advantages of a longitudinal study? What do you think? So, you're studying that one person or one group over a long period of time. Caitlin, what do you think? What are some advantages to a longitudinal study? You get more out of it. Yeah, good job. You're going to actually see the development of that one person or that group of people for the development for the longevity. Okay, seeing their characteristics, seeing their behavior, seeing maybe who they hang out with, their peer groups. Okay, maybe some of their, I don't know, some of their, some of the things that they like to be involved with. Okay, extracurricular activities, whatever have you. So you can have a great study about one person or group of people for a long period of time, see their development through their developmental stages, and really have a good report of that one person or group of people. What do you think is a negative aspect, though, of a longitudinal study? What do you think, Connor? Yeah, what's a negative effect of it, you think? So, what's that? Well, so it's obviously 20 years, right? This experiment, this, I guess you could say this observation is lasting a long time, isn't it? Yeah, it's going to take quite a bit of time for you to gather all this information, all these observations, and it's very time expensive. You're going to be really diving into this person and this group of people, and really taking this information down for a long period of time. All right, so a good example, like I said, is developmental stages. Raven, you got that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. What about a cross-sectional study? Well, a cross-sectional study is just how we view the population or group or one person, okay, from each developmental stage. Okay, this is an easy way to gather information. A positive effect of it is that you're getting that information really quick. It's not taking really any time for you to gather that information like a longitudinal study. It's not taking 20 years. It's not taking however many years it takes for the development of a one person or a group. Okay, so the positive effect of it is it's less time expensive. You can gather that information real quick at one given time, one given moment. So you're going to maybe be looking at a group of people or one person and the sensory motor stage. Okay, let's say birth to 2 years old. And you're going to focus on a person from this pre-operational stage, 2 to 7 years old. Okay, then you're going to view a person from this formal operational stage and the concrete operational stage. Does that make sense? So you're picking someone out from, let's just say, years, okay, stages of their development, and you're gathering that information, that data all at once. So again, a positive of this, it doesn't take too long to gather this information. It's not taking forever for this experiment to be developed or for this observations to be gathered. What do you think a negative effect, though, is of a cross-sectional study? What do you think, Allison?
We might not get as much information.
Yeah, you won't get as much as detailed information of a study. Now, let's face it, everybody changes. You might not have, and everybody goes through development a little bit different. So your study could be altered. It could be skewed depending on the different people or different groups that you ended up looking or making observations off of. Yeah, so your information is going to be kind of scattered. It's going to be all over the place. Longitudinal study is better in that case, in that retrospect, because you can gather that information from one group or one person for the whole development. And this one, you're picking different people. You're picking different groups to study at one given time. So again, your data could be skewed just a bit. Right, Raven? Yeah. Right, Caitlin? Yeah, of course. Cohort sequential study. What's this? Cohort sequential is that we are studying one person or a group of people for a short period of time. So this might be 2 to 3 years. We're going to study these people, okay, or this group. And this is a great way, again, of gathering information. It's a little bit more in depth than a cross-sectional study because you're actually picking up these observations. You're actually writing down these observations a little bit more in detail, okay, as you're studying them for a little bit longer than one given moment in time. But at the same time, it's not as great as a longitudinal study in that aspect because you're not really seeing the full development of that person or that group of people. Okay, so again, it's like a cross-sectional, it's like a combination of both here, where you're picking different groups and different people at different stages, but you're studying them for a longer period of time. So it might be 2 to 3 years, maybe 5 years. Okay, but at the same time, we're not gathering that information like a longitudinal study for the full development of these people, okay, or this group of people. Okay, we're not gathering that. It might be skewed depending on different people we study at that section or that developmental stage of time. Okay. So again, an advantage of it, well, it doesn't last near as long as a longitudinal study. And maybe a disadvantage is, well, it takes a little bit longer, obviously, than a cross-sectional study. Okay, it's lasting 2, 3 years rather than one given moment in time. It's only lasting 2, 3 years compared to 20 years. So there are clear advantages and disadvantages of each study. And just applying it to the developmental stages, I think, is pretty easy and self-explanatory with these types of studies. Is there any questions on that, guys? So longitudinal, we good with that? We know the pros and cons of it. A cross-sectional, again, pros and cons of those studies. And then a cohort sequential. Again, maybe one might be more time expensive, but you're gathering more accurate information, detailed observations. Maybe one's just at a given time. You're saving a lot of time for yourself, but you're not going to have as much detailed observations. And let's just say with a cohort sequential, we're going to watch and observe these participants a little bit longer, having a little bit more detailed information and observations. But again, we're not seeing the full development of that person or group through the longevity of time. All right, you guys good with that? Okay, well, that's all I have for today. I wanted to go over those 3 studies with you, and that's it. That's it. So for tomorrow's bell ringer, maybe look up some examples of these studies. Okay, I talked about the developmental stages, so I think it'd be important that you come up with maybe an example of these stages. All right, so maybe that's your homework for today. Okay, look up examples of a longitudinal study, a clear example of a cross-sectional, and a cohort sequential for tomorrow's bell ring. All right, so use your time wisely. I'd like you to do that right now, and then you guys can hang out.